Hope you're doing okay. We get a slight relaxation tomorrow in the restrictions. That will be good. I had a great day yesterday, in part because of the rugby. I don't know if you got to watch Leinster. It was a big game. If you're a rugby fan, I know not everyone is, but it was the quarterfinals of the European Cup, and we won away from home. There was a few instances where it was, and this happens in rugby and in other sports, where the referee has to go and ask the officials who look at all the videos to have a look at an incident. It happened twice, I think, yesterday. And it's quite interesting what they do. They look at everything from all these different camera angles. Something's happened on the pitch live in real time, really fast. And it's happened so quickly that it's hard to be able to see all that's gone on. So they slow down and they look from about 3 or 4 different camera angles to see what exactly just happened there. And then what do we need to do? And each angle that they use adds something different. You see it from a different perspective and you get a different slant on the incident. None of them tell the whole story by themselves, but they all give this slightly different angle. And I want to look at John's account of the Passion of Jesus this morning from one angle, just from one specific angle, and it's from the angle of this passage in chapter 12. It's a bit of a turning point in the book. Chapter 12, we've had 11 chapters in John. They call it the book of signs, the first 11 chapters, because all these amazing stories where Jesus interacts with people and does signs, does miracles. So the last one is in chapter 11, where he raises Lazarus from the dead. And then chapter 12, where we are now, shifts. There's a change in the book. We're into the second half of the book. And we're into the final week of Jesus' life, his passion. Just before what Abby read for us was Palm Sunday, where Jesus enters into Jerusalem, the start of that final week. So we're going to look through the lens here. And in particular, it was verse 31 that Abby read for us. Let me just read it again. Now is the time. On this day, Palm Sunday, the start of his final week, Jesus clarifies what is happening. Now, at this time, now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. That's the angle I want to look at. It's talking about Satan, the prince of this world, the ruler of the air, as Paul calls him in Ephesians. He is going to be driven out. And there is like this hidden battle that goes on here in this last week. This battle between good and evil, between Jesus and Satan. And it's sort of under the radar sometimes. We don't see all the bits of it. But Jesus sets up his final week with this statement. And in fact, there's 4 explicit references to Satan in the rest of John's gospel in this final week, and at least 1 implicit reference. This is the battle of what is going on here. I'll just throw another one at you to show you in chapter 16. And here John's speaking, Jesus is speaking to his disciples about what will happen in the future when the Holy Spirit comes, that the Spirit, one of his roles will be to convict the world about judgments, because the prince of this world now stands condemned. Okay, that's the second of the references. So the prince of this world again, Satan, is going to be driven out. Satan is going to be condemned. That's what's going on here in this last week and into the cross and the resurrection of Jesus. And part of this comes and impacts us. But the center is this battle between Jesus and Satan. It then means that people like you and me can be drawn to God. He will draw all people to himself. Because the prince of this world is defeated, the true king can take over and draw the likes of you and me to him through the cross. So I want to focus on this theme. This is the angle we're going to take for this last week this morning. One of the other references is in chapter 14, verse 30. And there's 3 chapters where Jesus is speaking to his followers. It's after the Last Supper. They've had their last meal together, a Passover meal, and Jesus takes time to explain what's going to happen to them, to try and give them hope, trying to talk about peace for the future of what's going to happen. This is not the end. And when he talks about what is coming, he says this: the prince of this world is coming. Third reference to the prince of this world. He is coming. So it sets up Satan as the actor. He is the one who's being active here, who is initiating. Satan is the actor. Then at the end of these chapters with his disciples talking, the action starts again in chapter 18. We've been told that Satan, the prince of this world, is coming. Action recommences, chapter 18. And what do we have? Judas came, 18 verse 3. We've been set up to expect the prince of this world is coming, but actually we're giving Judas who came. Now, intriguingly, it's the same word, the same verb in the Greek. Satan's going to come, Judas came. And I think what's going on here is that Satan is coming through Judas. Satan is acting through intermediaries. He's not revealing his hand fully, but acting through Judas, because we're told this in the Last Supper. After, when they break bread, something happens to Judas, who's already been veering in this direction. It says, extraordinary for one of his close disciples. It says that Satan entered into him. The sense that he's gone inside him, inside his mind and his soul and his heart, and taken control of him, taken possession of Judas. So now Satan can act through him. After this happens, straight away it says Judas got up and left and went outside. And then there's just 4 words. And it was night. You know, they've had their meal and daytime has shifted. The sun has gone down. It's become dark. It was night. But I sense it's more than that, that actually it has now become night for this week. Night as Satan is starting his evil plan. There is darkness running through the land now. So Satan is fully active in this final week of Jesus' life. What's intriguing is who Judas brings with him. Coming back to 18 verse 3, Judas came and he brings with him a detachment. Let me get to 18 verse 3. Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. He brings 2 groups with him, the religious and the political. Chief priests officials, Pharisees officials, and then soldiers, the religious and the political, the Jews and the Romans. And they are going to collude together. From the rest of the story now that Judas is active, Satan is active through him, these are the 2 main groups, the 2 main actors. Jesus goes through 2 types of trials, the Jewish leaders and then Pilate and the Romans, the religious and the political. I remember growing up in Ireland, it was like, don't talk about politics or religion. You know, it was the old sort of thing, which is probably why I don't get invited to many dinner parties, you know, the things we're not supposed to talk about. But these are the 2 prime actors now for Jesus' last days. And I think there's something really significant here for us when we reflect with a broader view of Scripture. Because who are we supposed to be? What are we supposed to do as humanity? What's God's call upon us? But to love God and to love our neighbor. They're the 2 things that he really requires: love God and love our neighbor. And religion is the realm of God, the realm of the divine, of trying to help people relate to God. And politics is how people relate to one another, how we set up our society. And it should be love your neighbor. There are these 2 crucial forces. And what we see here is that Satan has gone underneath. He is acting through them, through Judas initially and through those he brings with him. And loving God has become idolatry. And loving your neighbor has become injustice. And these 2 themes then carry themselves through this final week. And I actually think these 2 themes are still so relevant for our world today. I don't know what comes up in your mind or your heart when you hear the word injustice. Even right now, you might be thinking and aware of ways in which people have acted unjustly upon you or the systems of our world have. We still experience injustice today. And idolatry too. Idolatry, we don't think about as much, and it's maybe not as obvious, but we experience it too. We experience the effects of it on us, and also the effects of on those around us, and how that then impacts us. Idolatry can be defined as loving something else fully and utterly. The love that should be given to God is then given to something else, and our loves are then wrongly ordered. And that then affects relationships. And you might see it when people who are close to you are in love with other things, and then they have less love to give to those around them. These things still stalk our world today. So I want to just look at these two in turn. The first is the religious. The Jewish leaders are the prime instigators here in the death of Jesus. I use religious here with a small r for a couple of reasons, because I want to make it clear that it's not true religion. I mean, these people are treasonous and they betray their own faith because they are killing their own Messiah. If ever you want to see Satan at work, there it is. But it's idolatry that's underneath this, because their religion has been surpassed by something else. Their love of God is surpassed by another love. It's a false worship. And we get a couple of clues through the whole story, through all those chapters that hint at that. In chapter 12, there's a bit where some of the leaders are actually interested in Jesus and take him seriously and want to follow him, but they don't go the full way. They won't go out in public because it says they loved human praise more than praise from God. Their idol was popularity or maybe reputation, and they couldn't take that final step of faith, full faith. In the midst of the trial, we have this awful moment where the Jewish leaders who are supposed to be leading their people to stay faithful and wait for God to send his Messiah, Pilate is speaking to them and says, "Is this your king?" And they say, "We have no king but Caesar." Completely siding with the imperial conquering power over their own faith. They've sided with power, a false god of ambition. These false gods and worship are everywhere, and we still see it today. People maybe aren't aware of it, we don't talk about it that much, but it's there. I mean, one of our big stories in the last probably 2 weeks has been, obviously all our stories are COVID for the last year and on news and small conversation. In the last week, we've got into this conversation around hotels and quarantine and all of this. And the big one that made the papers was these two ladies who went to Dubai. Now, look, I mean, we're stuck in our 5K. We're not supposed to leave it for family or friends, important social and relational reasons. And they left the country for cosmetic surgery. Now, can you tell me that the influence of image or body did not hold a sway or a power over them? That's what idols do when we long for certain things. They have power and influence our decisions. I've been aware myself of my own idols, I guess, in my life, sort of raising their ugly head again these last few weeks and months. My desire for success, to achieve something, for things to go well, it's just sort of there in my thoughts, and I find it hard to shake it over quite a period of time. And just the last few probably months, just been seeing a counselor just to try and work through what's going on there, because it has power. It's been there a long time, and I need help to unpick it. Idolatry. And the second force is injustice. The political forces which end up meaning injustice. I mean, 3 times in the trial, where it goes on to the political realm, to Pilate, he says, "I find no basis. This man is innocent, no basis." It's clear what should happen in the realm of justice, but that can't happen. It says, from then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. So he knew what he should do. He knew what the proper course of action was, but he couldn't carry it out. He was too weak. And we're told he was afraid of what would happen. And so injustice reigns in this trial and flourishes in our world still today. So we see these two forces at work, the religious and the political, idolatry and injustice. And we still experience it today. I know you do in different ways. Maybe we need to unpick some of those ways, but they're there for us today. And the tricky thing, and the reason they hold power over us, is not just that we live in a world marked by these things, but actually we're complicit in it ourselves. And then it's so hard to escape it. Once upon a time, Satan was our prince too. And so this is the hidden battle that's going on here. Jesus is defeating sin on the cross, but in that moment, in that first Easter, that sin was present in the religious and the political leaders of his time. And so this is the great news of the cross and the resurrection, is that Jesus fights this battle so that we do not have to. And Jesus wins this battle that we would not be able to win ourselves. One of his last cries from the cross is, "It is finished." And I've read this week that a better translation of that is, "It is accomplished," which gives the full sense of the word and the full sense for us today that all that Jesus came to win and do was accomplished. He completed his task of drawing the likes of you and me to him, driven out Satan, the previous ruler of this world, so that we can be free. Free. And we tie it together with the other themes that John brings out. We see what has gone on here. Idolatry is beaten because Jesus persevered all the way to death itself. One of the themes of John is Jesus being true to the Father. And it was just what Tom and Eileen led us in there in his prayer in Gethsemane. He stayed true to the Father, even unto death. The true God beating idolatry. And justice was beaten. That sentence that was placed on him was unjust. Jesus endured that sentence and beat it in being risen from the dead. He has rejected it. Jesus has won. He has beaten this. And then when Jesus comes to meet his followers after he's risen from the dead, in the first group meeting, again within John's gospel, in the first group meeting together in the upper room, he comes to them and he says, "Peace be with you." The peace that he'd already talked of leaving them and giving them, he says, "Peace be with you. I give it to you now, my peace, my shalom, the goodness of my new world. I give it to you now." Now, the sentence just before it tells us that even then the disciples had the doors locked for fear of the Jews. They're still cowering under these powers. But Jesus comes and says, right now, right here, in the midst of this, I can offer my peace to you because it has been accomplished. And these powers, though still present, are beaten and are now waning in our world. And you can experience my peace in the midst, right here, right now. And that offer is still what is there for us today. We can be drawn into this new king, that we get to live with him, with the true God, not a false God, with a just God, not injustice. We get to have that relationship with him. And we get to live in a new community, which is hopefully marked by these things. Encourage one another with true worship and worship together. Learn from each other's examples, from testimonies like Clementina's today, to go on more and more to follow this Jesus and not the false gods that surround us. And then live in this community where we will treat each other with love and with justice. This is what's been won for us in the resurrection. The battle that we can't win ourselves against these forces. Jesus stepped in and went all the way, letting the religious and the political try him, beat him and kill him. Idolatry and injustice. Yet he took it on, he faced it, he won, and he was risen from the dead. Amen.